1982, when Pope John Paul II was celebrating Mass for the youth in Scotland, he said, "You feel conscious of your inadequacy, but what I say to you is, place your lives into the hands of Jesus. He will accept you and bless you beyond your greatest expectations." I believe this is the feature of divine providence. It never fails us, but what is expected of us is that we lay at His feet whatever we have. In the first reading, we hear that God is inviting the people of Israel to come to Him and be satisfied. A question can arise in our minds. If God really cares, why are there so many still their needs unfulfilled? Why do we see many homeless, dejected, without food, education and so on? Can we take the first reading seriously where it is said, "Come to the waters, all you who are thirsty. Though you have no money, come. Buy wine and milk without money." And the next sentence is still interesting. Why spend money on things that cannot nourish? To understand the context in which Isaiah was speaking, let us go back to his times in the Old Testament. The people of Israel are taken to exile in Babylon, and so they are in exile now. Isaiah chapters 40 to 50 is known as Deutero-Isaiah. The speciality of these chapters is that it contains the message of hope and consolation, like, "Comfort, comfort my people, says the Lord your God." And these had near and distant messages to convey. Near is what it has to take place here and now, and the distant message is what is to come. In the reading, Isaiah is saying that their time of exile is coming to an end, and they are soon to return to Jerusalem, their own city. And thus, it calls for joyful response. When Isaiah says, "Come, he who has no money, buy and eat," which means that the places they are to return is a place which has no need of purchasing, which is also a foreshadowing of what is to take place in the future. Buy without price means the things that are offered there is something priceless and too precious to be added a price tag. Why spend money on those things that do not satisfy? This invites us to invest on things that has a purpose and meaning which only the divine provider is able to supply. And why does God have to offer such things to His people? It is because of love. And St. Paul would say, nothing can separate us from the love of Christ. The readings are actualized and practicalized in the gospel when Jesus fed the 5,000. Jesus, on hearing the death of John the Baptist, prefers to go to a lonely place, but before he could reach there, the crowds had already reached and were waiting for him there. They were really hungry and thirsty, not just physically, but spiritually. And therefore, Jesus taught, healed, and even fed them without paying any price. But what we notice here is that Jesus did not feed the crowd all by himself. He blessed the bread and the fish and gave them to his disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowd, which means he himself is the blessing and he gives freely to us. This incident also informs us of the role played by the apostles. It was through their hands that Jesus worked miracle on that day. And I am sure that he still does through us who believe in him. Today, Jesus might not have hands and feet. We are his hands and feet, and it is through us that he still works. But before he could perform miracles, he also expects that we give to him whatever we have. Then only he can work wonders. When the disciples expressed their concern for the crowd, he commanded them to do what seemed to be impossible. to feed such a large crowd when they had for themselves bare minimum. He wanted to teach them a basic lesson that whatever you have, if laid at the hands and feet of God, it is more than sufficient. Just let Him have it and He will do the rest. Today, Jesus seems to be asking us, His modern disciples, to give the crowd something to eat. And this is very applicable in the situation that we are facing. Due to pandemic and lockdown, we see many companies closing down and many have lost their livelihood. Many facing shortage of basic necessities. Instead of being blind and deaf to their needs, we need to respond to Jesus' imperative, you give them something to eat. Or in the words of Pope Francis, by giving to others to be the saints next door. So, no matter how much we have, very little or more, let us give it and place it at the feet of the Lord and let Him take it from there. Let us have full faith and trust in the providence of God, for it never runs out and it is always free. Wishing you all a blessed and pleasant Sunday.